Hello and welcome to the Biz Coach Show, hosted by my Biz Coaches and presented by the TLG Group. Our shows focus on giving entrepreneurs the edge they need to succeed. Let's meet our guest for today's episode. Our guest today is Mridu Parikh. She's a business owner, productivity coach, and trainer. While raising a family and running her own professional home organizing business, she felt strapped for time and immersed herself into learning all things productivity and time management, and is now a sought-after productivity pro. She's also a keynote speaker and does individual and group coaching, focusing on topics like prioritization, systems, effective routines, communication, and so much more. Learn more at lifeisorganized.com. Well, Mridu, it is great to have you with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I was just saying that it's been a busy week. So today it feels like a nice lighter day that I can enjoy. And this is just the highlight of my week. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, I know. I've been looking forward to it. I know Eric has. I know we have a lot of great stuff to cover today. So thanks again for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Of course.
Eric, always great to hang out with you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, David. Thank you. Excited to have a new guest today.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, hey, I know we've got a great show in store. Our topic for today is organizing your life and business. But I think before we dive into that, I'd love to learn just a little bit more about your backstory, kind of your journey to what's brought you to here, if you don't mind.
Yeah, as you kind of mentioned in the intro, I started my business as a professional home organizer back in the day when no one knew what that even was. And that was really just born out of, I had a 2-year-old. I was working in New York City in corporate, never saw him, thought my nanny was, felt like she was raising him. And when we made a big move from New York to Nashville, I had the opportunity to stay home, which I thought was the dream, and it wasn't. And I needed something else. So I started a business, having no business starting a business, but I did as a home organizer. And I think like a lot of business owners, I found out that I was spread too thin. I was ending up scattered, exhausted with the kids, business, family. I often was just feeling like a failure. And sometimes I was just even very resentful. And I would think to myself, how is it possible that I'm working this hard and I'm still not getting the results that I want? So I just jumped into learning all things productivity and time management just for my personal development, just for my own personal growth. And after lots of hits and misses, I discovered what worked for me, especially when I was overwhelmed and overloaded. So I thought, well, listen, I can either go back to the constant reactivity and the constant scatteredness that I was in, or I can embrace these new beliefs and simplify my life and get structure in place. And that's what I did. So I went from feeling defeated all the time to quite pretty much on top of all my demands and my distractions. And that is when I actually transitioned my business from home organizing to productivity for other business owners. So now I teach those skills to other time-strapped producers and experts, business owners who want to take control of their day also and just feel less overwhelmed and be more in control.
Awesome. I think there's a lot in there that a lot of business owners can relate to, right? Feeling like I'm working so hard, I'm not making the progress I want, that frustration. So I think very relatable. I'd love to just dive a little bit deeper in that pivot, if that's okay. And kind of how did you discover that passion for helping other people achieve that productivity and organization? Like, you could have kept it all to yourself. So what led to you wanting to kind of, change the direction of your business and share that with other people?
So actually, when I was home organizing, I should probably clarify that I really only did that for a year in people's homes, but I recognized pretty quickly I didn't love the physical labor, but I loved teaching. I love the teaching. I love the coaching. So I actually moved my business online, still as an organizer, but I was an organizing coach. So I was coaching other people how to organize their homes and simplify at home. But what I was finding, it was pretty interesting. Like, while I was going through, like I said, this personal development path of trying to prioritize and learn things, I was also realizing that a lot of my clients didn't even have the time to organize their house or didn't have the time for coaching. Like they couldn't prioritize it. And so it was kind of this like dual signal coming to me that is really, I think, where it starts, like on, getting your focus, prioritizing, getting your systems in place. And then you can find the space and energy and time for all the other goals in your life. So it kind of was just this like great moment of like, okay, I'm hearing this from my clients and it's happening to me personally.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's great.
Yeah, actually, if I comment, one of the things that resonates with me with that story, when I went through my life coaching certification process with Jack Canfield, right, and we were going through that, it was cleaning up your messes is one of the chapters that he talks about in Success Principles, and it was all about, you start with your physical space, and I know Anthony Robbins does a lot of work on that too, but you start with your physical space, and if your physical space is a disaster, and it's, things are all over the place, then mentally you're also typically in that same spot. And anybody who says they're not, I'm pretty convinced that that's not accurate. But the point being that it starts, when the more organized your physical space is, the more organized your mind becomes, and you train yourself. And I was like that when I was younger. My dad instilled that. He was in the military, so he had instilled a lot of that structure.
Yes.
And so over the years, I rebelled it when I was young, but as I got older and I started, hey, I need to be more disciplined about this. I need to organize with this. And it played out in my life, so and I spent some time in the military, and I still roll my t-shirts. I still roll my underwear and socks. It's like all this stuff that but I carried that, but now I have a structure and a process, and that's played out significantly well for me in my business. Because managing that managing my physical space allows me mentally to not think about all those other things that a lot of people get distracted by. And whenever I feel like you were saying, when I feel that way in my business, where I feel like I'm behind to here and I'm behind to here, I usually, if I look at my physical space, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been letting things slip. Yeah. And I focus on that, and then things start tunneling, it kind of channeling in for me, and it comes together more organized in my head that way.
I completely agree. I think focus is so important physically to be mentally focused. And there is literally just your visual space in front of you. And then all the million thoughts are going on in your head. And then all our technology attached to our hands and our laptops. I mean, there's no shortage of distractions in our lives. So the more that you can simplify it, right? The more that you can just get them away from you, around you, because, eliminate them, the more focused you're going to be. And so I think so much of it is in our control, where people think it's not, right? I think we think like, I'm distracted all the time, it's out of my control. And there's so much more in our control than we think. So exactly what I'm saying, like all the stuff around you, even if you like get on your laptop and you have 7 million, folders on your desktop, like that's even like mental overload. One thing I even tell my clients is, even when you're doing your work, how often do we have like 30 tabs that are open, right? Yes. And just that it's every tab that's open is a reminder to you of everything you haven't gotten done. So that becomes this weight on your shoulders. It's, it's just there consciously and subconsciously. And so the more we can just, less truly is more. The more you can simplify, the more likely you're going to stay focused and do your best work at the highest quality.
That's awesome. It's funny, as you mentioned electronic devices and the distractions. I'm like, we could probably do a week's long worth of episodes just on that.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, I think as we, kind of continue following on your journey, as you're working with, clients right now, sure, a lot of them business owners, right? What are some of the common challenges that you find that small business owners face when it comes to managing their time, or kind of that physical space of staying organized?
Yeah. Probably the number one thing is that we're so caught up in the weeds. And notice I say we, because it will happen to me too, right? As much as we are trying to pull ourselves out, we just get caught up in the details, and too much of that. And so what happens is you're working all day, 12 hours, right? You're putting in all that time, and still at the end of the day, you think, what did I get done? And it's so frustrating because you're working so hard, you're so driven, you're so ambitious, but we're not really prioritizing the right things, right? We want to get back to business and not busyness. And there's a million ways we can stay busy, but here's the tricky thing. They feel really productive. Like the feeling that you get, you're like, I'm getting more stuff done. I'm checking it off the list. I'm crossing it off. So, you're in that space, like I'm doing, but is it really, if you step back, the most important priorities? Is it moving my business forward today? Is it moving my relationships forward? Is it moving my health forward? Because, there's personal goals and there's professional goals. And as business owners, it's all integrated.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, what we're doing, it's a constant battle of asking yourself, is this really the most important thing? Because I will say everything is important. When clients tell me, but everything is important, like, you're right. Everything is important. I totally get it. But we just got to pick the most important because it's all going to be important,
Yeah.
So that's one of probably the biggest things. And then that leads to procrastinating. So we procrastinate the things we really should be doing, or now they've built up so much that they feel so overwhelming that you're like, I will do anything than that thing that I should be doing, right? I'll find any excuse. This is the perfect time to go organize my closet when I really should be, doing the work, or something else like that. So that leads to, it's just like this snowball effect. And another thing that I find a lot is sort of this perfectionist mentality of which plays into procrastinating, which is sometimes like, I can't move forward on this thing because it's not perfect, or I can't put that into play, or I can't release this, or I can't, because it's not perfect. So I think all of these are like the types of things I hear all the time, even though that might be not what people are coming to me for exactly, but that's sort of like the root of all of them.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, actually. And I lived through some of that. So I totally get where you're coming from and your clients.
Well, and it's funny, as you mentioned all of that one of the things that comes to my mind as my business was growing and I had to make some pivots through COVID and then kind of a rebranding. And strategically, I'm trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do differently in my business? As I'm going through that process, I found myself avoiding certain things. And when I was avoiding those things with my business, because I was a little bit in limbo, so I wasn't sure what action to take. So procrastination kicked in, like you were saying. And all of a sudden I found that I was doing projects like redoing the garage or redoing a closet under the stairs. And my wife would come home and she's like, wow, I see that you did all this work. And I'm like, yeah. I was like, that probably wasn't what I should have done for 4 hours today, but it was at least I was productive, right?
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And then I think another thing that happens with that, I think you just mentioned something about how you were doing it or not giving it. I don't know. Something made me think of it. We're not delegating. So that's the other thing. We feel like we're the only ones that we can do it, because if we give it to anybody else, they're not going to understand it. They're going to screw it up. It's not going to be as good quality. They don't have the passion that I do. It takes me longer to teach them than do it myself. There's a million reasons we can come up with, like not delegating our work and trusting others with it. And that, of course, is going to hold you back too, because there's only that far we can get as one person or even two people, right? There's only that much bandwidth. There's only that much capacity. So you will stall. You will definitely get to a point where you can only produce or create or brainstorm or strategize that much. And so that's another issue that comes up a lot.
Absolutely.
Great point.
Well, I'm curious, if you don't mind, is there maybe, a particular client or a business or business owner that you've worked with that you had a high level of success with, whether it was improving their time management or productivity or organization, that you can maybe spotlight as kind of a transformation for somebody that, kind of applied the things that you teach in a big way?
Yeah. So I'm thinking of a current client, Shamika, if she's listening, who is amazing. She is a lawyer. She has a law firm. She has a team, and she's leading the team. And when she came to me, she was like, I feel like a lot of people who come to me are like, I've tried everything. I've tried every time management tool, every blog, every podcast, every, app, everything, the planners. Very worried. Is this even going to work for me? I don't know what you could do differently, kind of thing. But she also has a young child. So she's a mom and taking care of a business, a growing business. And basically she's like overwhelmed, overstretched, and overloaded. So we did a lot of different things, but I'm going to kind of take you through like the chronology of her day. I think that might be a way to do it. So first thing she was really struggling with was, I can't ever get out of bed on time. Like, I have this time I want to get up. I snooze. I can barely get the kids out the door. Then everybody's stressed out in the morning because they can feel my tension. So, that was one area we addressed, because the way I look at it, again, this is integrated. This is holistic. Like, if you can't get out the door, or if you're leaving stress in the morning, you're not going to like kill it in your 9 a.m. presentation either. So we talked about some really simple tweaks. And this is where I think the magic happens. We're not going to tear down your life and like start all over from a blank slate. We're like, what's a little tiny little tweak that we can make that works with your personal dynamics and personality and circumstances? So I was like, okay, so what's one way we can get you out of bed? And I'm trying not to laugh because it's silly, but it works. And she was like, well, we were talking about, do we put the phone in the bathroom? Like, how do we get that? And she's like, well, once my feet hit the floor, if I don't have slippers on, I won't get back in bed because I feel like the floor is dirty. So we moved her slippers. I mean, this is how silly it was. We took her slippers and put them like in the bathroom or something. So she had to walk to the bathroom in the morning, or I think we put the alarm in the bathroom and she had to walk to the bathroom and then she wasn't going to get back in bed. It's silly, but my point is, it's like we had to do something that was very specific to her because that's not going to work for me. Like that's something else for me. I put my workout clothes at the foot of my bed, like literally at my bed. So when I wake up, I put them on first, or I will never work out. Like it won't happen. If I miss that step, it's not going to happen. So I have to work for me. So that's an example. So we did that. Then in work, her biggest complaint or issue was focus. She's like, everyone is pinging me. We're on Slack. We're in email. My phone is ringing. It's just my texts are blowing up. I can't, handle it. And so I was like, well, what if you asked your team that no one could call you in our office, no meetings, no in-office email, no Slack for the first 1 hour of the day. And she was like, I don't know, that's not going to work. Everyone has problems in the morning. Like all the crises are happening. I'm like, let's just try it. So we wrote the email together because that's a whole other thing about how do you communicate this, why it's department. We did it on our call. And so she had to send it on the call. So it was actually taking action. I'd say this for a reason. So she was very reluctant to do it. She sends it. When we got off the call, before we got off, we get off and then she texts me 5 minutes later. I just got an email from my team and they asked, can we do it for 2 hours instead of 1? So like, it was immediate, right? And so it's like they were craving it. And I say this all the time. Everybody is craving focus. Everybody is craving structure. Like it's not just you. And so now they've implemented a 2 hour in the morning. It's 8:30 to 10:30. No one sends email. No one talks. I mean, you can talk, but no one's sending Slack. And she's like, my entire life has changed with this. Now I'm getting up on time and, I'm getting so much work done that would probably at 5 o'clock in the evening, I wasn't getting as much done, but now I have 2 focused hours. So I can take you through more and more of the day, but I'm just, it was things like that. And then we're like, okay, what are those important things that we focus on? The most important things, because here's the thing, the rest of the day is going to be all distractions. You're going to be putting out fires. You're going to be doing email. So let's figure out what is the most important things that's going to move your business forward. And that's your 2 hours. And then during that 2 hours, how do you stay focused? So we worked on those. So, those are examples, but the growth and the development that she's done and the strategic work and the stuff that really matters has been off the charts. And that's just led from one thing to another. But I can keep going on. That's just like something happened between 10 and 10:30.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I think those are some great, strategies, some great techniques. I'd be curious, are there any other, strategies in general? I mean, certainly those were very personalized and it sounds like that's very impactful, right? Obviously. But any kind of, general strategies or techniques that you'd recommend for small business owners to help them, be more productive or just kind of get more done within their business, prioritize things?
Yes. Okay. So and there's 3 steps, I think, for me. Do I think of like the most effective productive day, whether you're starting your business, you're a 5-figure earner, a 6-figure earner, a 7-figure earner. I'm telling you, it's the same thing over and over. And if you do this, if you make it a daily practice, again, you're going to see your productivity soar. So the first thing is write down your top 5 goals for the day. And this is how I break it up. So I do 3 professional goals, 3 goals related to your business, and 2 goals personally. Okay. So the first question I get with that is, well, how do I pick it? I have 100 or 300 things on my to-do list. How do I pick those? And when I started teaching all this, I used to follow all these productivity gurus and all the books and all the trainers. And I would teach, because I train a lot also, I coach and train. I would put up one of those slides with, have you seen that Eisenhower matrix has urgent, non-urgent, important, non-important? I would put that up and say, okay, now you take all your to-dos and all your priorities and you put them in this matrix. And then after a while, when I was the beginning, I started doing this. I'm like, no one's ever doing that. No one's actually, when we're overwhelmed and chaotic, we're not all going to pull out a matrix and start filling it in. So instead, after many years of doing this, I've come up with one question that gives me the same results as the matrix. And the question is this: what are the top 5 goals, or the top 5 things I will do today or will accomplish today that will make me feel successful before my head hits the pillow tonight? So what are the 5 top things I will do to make me feel successful before my head hits the pillow tonight? And the reason this is so powerful is because it has to be about what before you go to bed tonight. So not what makes me feel successful right in this minute. So right in this minute, I could have 20 things on my to-do list, and I could be like, oh, I'm gonna get this email, get this down, get all these things. I feel so good, right? That's that false sense of productivity. They're not the most important things. But when my head hits the pillow tonight, when I'm going to bed, I'll be kicking myself because I didn't get the training done that I said, or I didn't get that really difficult email that's been sitting in my email box for 2 weeks. I didn't get that out, right? Or I didn't do or I didn't call that insurance agent for the thing that's for 3 months hanging over me, right? So even though I can check all the things in the minute, it feels good. It doesn't feel good when you go to bed at night. But so personally, it's usually something that has to do, for me, it's usually like working out, something to do with exercise. Like I can organize my closets all day, but I'm going to feel like crap if I didn't like get in my exercise that day when I go to bed. So that's kind of how I pick it. But I've noticed that if I do that, I could go through that whole matrix. I'm going to get the same results. I'm going to figure out exactly what my most important things are. So that's step 1. Then step 2, and just a little caveat on that. When you write them down, write them somewhere separately. Don't write them with your 100 other to-dos, because you will get distracted. You're going to look at your list and you're going to feel overwhelmed and you're going to lose focus. So like you just take a sticky note, literally. You write your 5 and you stick it on your laptop. That's what I've done. Then number 2, this is one that gets very much, I feel like it never happens. No one ever does this, is add a time estimate to each of your 5. So really, how long do you think it's going to take if you are focused on it? So now we're not talking about doing 6 different projects at one time. You're like, if I'm just going to focus on responding to that email I've been putting off, will it take me 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes? Who knows? If you have no idea, it doesn't matter. You just put a number down anyway. You want to put a stake in the ground, because there's only one bad decision, and that's to make no decision. Like to sit there and spinning in circles and figuring out what it, just put a number down, because that's how you're going to learn how long things really take. So you do that for your 5, you put them down, right? And then over time, so one example I'll say, and don't fake it. So I also podcast like you guys, and on my calendar, I would always put 60 minutes to write and I write it out. Like how you do like notes, I research, I do all stuff, 60 minutes every week. I would just do every week, 60 minutes. And let me tell you, it takes me 90 minutes every week. Like it does not take me 60 minutes. But for some reason, I thought I can fool myself. If I just write 60 minutes every week, it's going to take me 60 minutes. It does not take, And so like, don't fake it. This is why we write it down, put an estimate. And when reality hits, you're like, the next week I'm going to put 90, because all you're doing is shooting yourself in the foot. When you put down 60, you schedule 60, you don't get it done. And then you just feel like horrible, right? You feel like I'm defeated again and I don't get stuff done. So that's the second step. Do you have any questions? First of all, I'm talking a lot. So
no,
that's great. Awesome. Love it.
Okay. And then the third step is also, I think, gets missed. And this is to actually now take those 5 tasks with their time estimates and put them on the calendar. Actually put it on your calendar. Because here's what happens. I think a lot of people do 1 and 3. They have their to-do list and they have a calendar. And you look at your to-do list, you're like, this makes complete sense. When I look at my calendar, this can absolutely work. Like, that's why we have 10 or 15 things on our to-do list. It makes sense in our mind. We're like, I have all these free open hours. I can get it done in my day. Problem is there's something called like belief bias or positivity bias. So there is a gap between what we believe we can get done and what we can actually get done. And so it doesn't work. Like you can't believe that. You have to put it on the calendar. And that's why I think there's a gap. There's a problem there. So once you put them on the calendar, then you're like, was I kidding? There's no way I was going to get that. That one takes an hour and that one takes 2 hours. And I have 4 coaching calls today, and I have to pick up my kids from school, and I have to shower, I have to eat lunch. There's no way. And that's when you can make adjustments. And you're like, okay, I was totally overestimating. Let me either move something, take something out, or say, I'm not going to write the whole podcast. I'm just going to outline it. So I don't have 90 minutes, I have 30 minutes. And I'm going to, and you adjust your expectations. And so why this all works is because instead of, as I said earlier, when you're working all day and then you feel like I got nothing done, even though you got 5 or 6 important things done, but your to-do list was 15, you just feel horrible. Like we just feel like crappy. And you're like, I never do what I say I'm going to do. But if you only had 5 and you got 5 done, now you feel like a winner. You feel successful, you're inspired, you're motivated for the next day. And if you have time for more, great, add some more on, we'll probably do a ton more, and that feels even better. But having putting your expectations too high and then coming in low feels really, really bad. All right, I'm going to stop. I've been talking a lot, but that is really, truly what I mean. It's so simple. It's such a simple process. But if everyone did that every day, your productivity is going to soar.
Yeah. So I just have to make a comment, David. You heard what she referred to the matrix as, right?
I did.
Eisenhower? It is 2 names. It's
no, the Eisenhower matrix. No, I developed a training program that David helped me put together. He does training content and puts it all together. So I did a time management session years ago when we were working together in the wireless industry, and he had done the research to find out that what was popularized by Stephen Covey was actually originally the Eisenhower matrix. Yep. And so we dubbed it the Eisenhower matrix in the training, and I let everybody know. And they're like, "Isn't that from Stephen Covey?" I'm like, "Wow, the original person was." Anyway, kind of a side track. I had to share.
And by the way, I think it's still one of the most relevant and great,
totally
things, right? I'm just talking about the day-to-day chaos. We're just
right? Your application. Yeah, your application of that is spot on. And it's funny because as you were explaining it, I'm like, I even think as a business coach today, because I did a lot of work with time management and leadership development and a lot of professional development skill sets. I don't do as much of that as I did before, but with my clients, they don't have time to go through a 4-hour workshop on time management.
Yeah.
Right.
But if I could give them that one skill, that one task, that actually those 3 things combined,
right,
that would probably help a ton of them make some major progress in their time management, because that's huge. It's very practical. To your point, it does narrow it down. And I'm very familiar with the rule of 5. I learned that from Jack. It was, you have your rule of 5. So you take your 5, add in the piece that you had about the amount of time it's going to take, which is key. And then the other thing that I do as well is I put it in my calendar.
Yeah.
I tell my wife, I'm like, if we schedule date night, it goes in the calendar.
Perfect.
And I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, that's so corny." I'm like, "No, you don't understand. I am always busy. If it's not on my calendar, I will forget. But if it's on my calendar, it gets done." 100%. And the psychology behind that is so amazingly helpful, because it makes me do stuff that I wouldn't necessarily do because it's in my calendar. I'm like, that's next on the list. And for me, it's the equivalent of my to-do list.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, I always tell my clients too, even your unstructured time can be structured. So even if you're like, I don't want to have my Saturday structured at all, I'm like, that's fine. But do you want to do a date night? Do you want to have a family activity? You don't have to pick the time, but as long as you know that day is dedicated for that thing, it still sort of structures that. So now, again, right, just like you said, you feel so good that you got something really meaningful done.
Well, I think the other piece to that too is I'm now present in my personal life when I need to be.
Yes.
To your point, a lot of busy professionals have a tendency to disregard the personal life because I'm so busy, and they don't have time. And I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be. Well, I think one of the things that we got caught up in our company, and David, you remember this, there was a lot of discussion about work-life balance. And there's this misnomer that work-life balance means if I spend 40 hours working, I spend 40 hours in my personal life doing whatever those things are. And I'm like, depending on what your career choice is, that's probably not realistic. But can you carve out 15 quality hours where you're completely focused on your child, your kids, your wife, whatever it is, your family, your parents, whatever's important to you? If you give it that same focus and attention in your personal life, you won't feel so out of balance. But if you're constantly checking your phone and looking at your phone all the time and checking social media and seeing what's going on at work while you're supposed to be with your family, they'll never feel valued, and you won't feel like you give it the balance that it deserves.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so different for everyone, kind of going back to how personal it is. I have one client who, she has very young kids. She feels no guilt about working. She's like, I feel bad that I don't feel bad, I should, but as long as I'm there to tuck them in every night, that's her goal. She's like, I want to be there to put him to bed and be there to spend time with them for that last hour. Right. And that's okay, because they're daycare, whatever. I have other clients that are feeling horrible if they're not home by 3:00. So it's so different what balance looks like for everybody. And that's why it is so important to be personal. There's no black and white,
Yeah.
what's right and wrong. It's just what works for you,
Right.
and that's for you. Yeah.
That's a great point. And what I really respect about your process is you're definitely demonstrating you meet people where they are in their lives, and you take your experience, your skill sets, your tricks, traits, whatever you want to call it, and you apply them with the client in the space where they're at today, right? Because I think that's the problem with a lot of coaches, in my personal opinion, in my humble opinion, is a lot of coaches have some structured process that they go through. And typically you have to have that when you first start out, because you really, you need some kind of guideline to follow. But the problem really becomes is the client that needs that coaching, whatever that coaching is. If you can't meet them where they're at and give them something practical, like you were taking, it's like, I can give you the Eisenhower matrix.
Right.
Hell, I can read about that. But that doesn't do me any good if I can't practically applicate it in my life on a day-in, day-out basis. So to your point, being able to take something like that and give them something very executable, that's something simple like that, like, oh, I can do that tomorrow, and if I do that for 66 days, I'll have a new habit, and I'll probably be able to build off that and make that even more effective use of my, for my focus and develop my, train myself to be more disciplined in whatever it is that I'm trying to do. Right. But it creates that process of now I'm getting 5 things done every day. And the other part is the, self-confidence.
Yes.
When we don't do something that we really feel like we should be doing, we actually start taking the legs out from underneath our own self-confidence, and we're chopping away at our own confidence levels. And when you start doing the things that you said you're going to do, is agreements with yourself. When you make agreements with yourself and you fulfill those agreements, your self-confidence is through the roof, and you believe you can do more than what you had traditionally always believed you could do. And that's a huge component of it too. And that to your point, a lot of people that come to you, I would assume, feel self-defeated, and they're like, I just can't. Like you said, the woman said, I don't know what you can show me, but nothing's worked.
Yep.
Right. And now you're defeated. Right. So getting them from defeated to empowerment, that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And as a coach, it's like what you believe is how you feel, or what you think. How you believe is what you think is how you act. So if you believe I can never catch up with things, I'm always going to be behind, I'm always overwhelmed, then you think, oh my God, they're so much smarter than me. How does he or she do it? How come I can't catch up? And then you act very unfocused. You let people, take control of your time. You're always distracted. And so it's like that vicious circle. But if you believe, no, I know how to be in control, and I can accomplish what I set out to do. And then you think, okay, I know exactly the system and I know how to, plan my day. Then that's how you act. You're like more focused. You put up better boundaries. You delegate more. So I completely agree with you. It's just that cycle, and it really just starts like in our brain.
That's awesome.
Well, I heard there's a lot of really good stuff. There were 2 things particularly I want to dive a little bit deeper into. One of the items is you guys were talking about kind of, the work-life balance aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And some people feel really guilty, or like, even if it's just them, maybe they don't have a family, but they don't have time for self-care and things like that. I'd be curious, how do those successful routines that you're describing, how does that set people up not only for success and productivity in their business, but more of that work-life balance? How do those 2 things work together?
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, I love routine. I love structure, but I think it gets a bad name. I think if you're especially creative, you think structure is going to hold me back and it's going to put me in a box, and it's not. So it's kind of like that unstructured structure. I was saying how maybe your Saturday is for your self-care, or your Saturday is for your family. It's not saying you have to do a certain thing at a certain time, but there's a focus for the day. So then you feel really accomplished. So I think the more systemized and routine you can get, I know it absolutely impacts your value, your self-integrity, your confidence, your self-esteem, because again, you are getting things done. And the more you can get, let's say if it's in a business perspective, you can get the work done, the more time and freedom and space you have for the free time, for doing nothing, for vegging out, for binging Netflix, for spending time with your friends, but without the guilt. We can do that guilt-free, it's incredible. So an example might be, let's say on a Saturday, you have your to-do list and you have all these things you want to get done. You're like, I'm just going to sit down and watch this one show. And then it's like 6:00 at night and you binged all day, right? And then you feel terrible, self-deprecated, self-defeated. You're like, I suck, whatever. But then let's say you have another Saturday and you have the same day, but you've given yourself permission. Your plan for the day was, I'm just going to sit and relax and do anything I want, like binge watch TV. So you do the same exact thing. The result is the same, right? The Saturday didn't plan, the Saturday you did plan. But the way you feel is completely different. So instead of feeling defeated and self-deprecating, now you're like, oh my gosh, this is what I wanted to do today, and I did it. I feel great about it. So it's literally just that intention of, then that's a system, that's a routine, that's a structure in your day. And just by creating that, your result of the day is the same, but the result of your mind and how you feel and how you're going to feel the next day is completely different. So that's like a really basic example for someone who says, I can't do structure routine. It doesn't have to be every minute of every day. In fact, it shouldn't be. You're going to go crazy. But there are simple ways to do that. And another thing, I don't know if you necessarily asked this, but it's just making me think that routines, I think, are different. Routines and habits are two very different things. I think people jump into routines, and that can also, or try to jump into routine and then fail. And that can also make them feel very constricted or restricted. Whereas a habit is one thing. It's like one thing at a time. A routine is a series of habits.
Okay.
We try to jump into the routine. So let's say like, I'm going to get into this routine to doing all my social media, and I'm going to do 3 LinkedIn things on a Friday and 2 reels on Tuesdays. You can build this whole routine, and it feels hard and overwhelming, and you fail at it. Or the habit might just be, every Friday I'll do one live on my phone when I'm walking in the morning. Like, that's just one thing. And that becomes much more easier, less difficult to stick with when you're doing that. So
absolutely.
I'm not even sure why I went there, but I was just thinking, like, I think that's also people get
I know it.
About routine.
I think that's a great point. To your point, and I had not heard that said before, but that's a great point. A routine is a series of habits, and just start with the habit, right?
Yeah.
Do the one thing. And I'm trying to remember where I heard that. I think it might have been Alex Ramosi, but he's like, do the one thing and then let that build on that. Yeah. If that one thing, you're getting the result that you want to get from that, and you want to add to that, and then you add to that. But start with the one thing. Don't try and do this whole, drawn out routine of all these different things. To your point, your example was perfect, because I'm actually going through that myself personally with the social media.
Yeah.
But you just do the one post and then let that build from there.
Yeah.
It was funny you were saying the structured downtime.
Mm-hmm.
It totally reminded me of Office Space. How was your weekend? It was amazing. I did nothing, and it was everything I thought it could be.
But I gotta watch that movie again. I wonder if does it hold time? Like, it was so good back then. Is it still good today? Or I don't know.
Awesome. Although I got to tell you this, for about 4 or 5 years now, I've been writing what I believe will be the part 2 of that. It's a pet project that I started on, and it revolves around working in the wireless industry. So
there you go.
That movie needs a part 2. It was so good.
It was an awesome movie. Yeah. But the other part that you said about the how you feel when you're making progress, and how that the impact that has on you is dramatic. And I think that not enough people give that credit, right? I think that's as important of anything else that you do, because once you emotionally are connected to and feel good about the progress you're making, the endorphins kick in, and now you're compelled to do, and stay in that course. Whereas, to your point, if it feels hard and it feels rigid and it feels inflexible, then you're kind of like, oh, this sucks. I hate this. I don't want to do this. And then you don't do it. And that's why we don't do the things that we set out to do, even though we had all the best intentions in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and in fact, my definition of productivity is also, I think, a little different than, again, all the books I read and what it was about. And to me, it's really not so much about efficiency or effectiveness. You hear a lot, or doing more. It is an emotion. So to me, productivity is an emotion you feel when you get the results you want. And if you can do it faster and better, that's like icing on the cake. But to me, I think it really starts with the emotion you feel when you get the results you want. So you get that, everything we've been talking about, if you can do what you set out to do, that's how you're going to feel the most productive.
Awesome.
Nice.
Very good. Well, I think the next thing I wanted to dive into or unpack a little bit more was something that I'm seeing kind of a theme pop up as we're talking about, time and productivity. There's this other element you were just talking about, kind of the emotion, but there's also kind of the mindset, how we view the work, how we view our time, how we view ourselves, and maybe the emotional reaction that comes from that. So I'm curious from your perspective as you're working with clients and business owners and everyone in between, what role does that mindset play in somebody's ability to be productive and achieve their goals?
Oh, it's everything. It's everything we've been talking about. It's, it comes back to, well, I think it also, we've talked about the self-confidence and the self-esteem, but it also just makes you a better leader, whether it's a leader at home, with your family, in the community, in your business. Because again, when you feel more empowered that I'm in control of my time, that you feel more empowered that I know where I'm putting my energy, you just show up. You show up as like a better role model. You're more confident in the work that you do, I think this is the way you connect with your clients. So it shows up, I think, not just only in kind of, yes, your own personal self-esteem, but really as a business leader and a business owner. Yeah.
Awesome.
Great
Cool.
point.
Well, I want to shift gears just a little bit, and then I'm, always thinking about our audience, and I'm thinking about, that small business owner that's watching this, and they are struggling. They're juggling multiple responsibilities, wearing multiple hats. It's something Eric and I talk about a lot, and I think sometimes the temptation is to get more done, I'm going to multitask. And I'm curious, just from your professional perspective, is that an effective strategy, or like what advice would you give to somebody that's struggling to juggle all of those different things?
Yeah. So multitasking, it's inevitable because we're all doing 100 things. We're in the business and we have all these different projects and all the different, areas we're covering. But so I think if you can, so I'll say that multitasking truly at the same time, meaning like I'm checking my text, I'm responding to an email, there comes a call. That's what I consider multitasking. And that's ineffective because we all know it. We like forget someone's name, or we send out something with a spelling mistake, or we've forgotten this with a detail falls through the crack. And that's just like this constant scatteredness. Your brain is on overload and you're doing it throughout the day. So that is a type of multitasking that does not serve us. The other type of multitasking, and I say this is, yes, we have different projects and we have to wear different hats during the day, but I don't really consider that multitasking. That's more like shifting your focus. So if we can move from the constant multitasking, like every 2 seconds, every 2 minutes, even every 5 minutes doing different things, to shifting the focus, maybe every 20 minutes or every 30 minutes, that's really what we want to strive for. So again, you're still touching the pieces you need to, you're still talking to your different clients, you're still working on your different projects, but stay focused on that one thing for 20 to 30 minutes, sometimes an hour, but an hour feels too long, then 30 minutes or 20 minutes even, because it's probably been so long that so many business owners and people in general have been focused for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, like truly 100% deliberately focused. You don't even know what you're capable of. It is amazing how much you can get done when the phone is in another room, your email is off, there's nobody talking, and you're just focused for 30 minutes. It's magical. I think we exceed our expectations all the time. So I know, you probably heard of things like the Pomodoro effect. So that's kind of like that 25 minutes. And I don't know how they discovered this back in the 80s before there was text and email, but it really is just the perfect amount of time to stay focused, because it's just when you're like, I'm feeling FOMO, everyone needs to get in touch with me. So it's like but just long enough that you can make the 25 minutes. Like it just feels like just the right amount of time. I'm going to pull this thing up. Another thing I use a lot is this cube timer. And it like has different numbers on each side. So if you're like, I just want to focus for 10 minutes, you just put that side down and then it goes up, and then it goes off after 10 minutes, or I just want to do 15 minutes. I put that down. So I love it. I use this all day long. So it just helps me keep me focused. But that's what I consider like you do multitasking effectively. You're still working on all the things, but during that time, just be really focused on the one.
Awesome.
I appreciate that. It's a really clear description, because I would generally, with you, I would completely decide. I would tell somebody, if you said I multitask, I'm like, well, you're completely ineffective then, because You're not getting it. But to your point, that if it's done effectively, like you just described, following that guideline, there's yes, you can absolutely get a lot of different things done in a reasonable amount of time. But to your point, trying to juggle 3 things at the same time, you're not doing any of them well, right? You're going half-rear-endedly through all of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a great perspective. I like that.
Yeah. And you can tell, but it's your energy level. Like if you ever want to test it on yourself, do a regular day that you normally do when you're multitasking like crazy. The same thing, emails, texts, responding, all the tabs open in your brain, and just give yourself a score at 5 o'clock. How do I feel between 1 and 10? How tired am I? How low on energy? And then do another day with the 30-minute increments. You just like 30 minutes of 30 minutes of email, 30 minutes of working on this project, 30 minutes of talking to this client, 30 minutes of phone call, and then see your energy level and score it again. I mean, I guarantee it's going to be 5 notches higher. You're just not going to be as scattered. And so your brain energy is just higher. Yeah.
Love it. Well, I love the practical advice there and the timers. And I'm curious, are there other tools, physical things, maybe planners, things like that, or, other devices you can use, or maybe even apps that you recommend to your clients?
So I keep it super simple. I mean, I think there's so many complexities right now. The last thing we need is more complications. So, I mean, I am just like Google Calendar, Google Drive, maybe an Asana, some type of project management tool. It could be Asana, it could be Evernote, it could be, Notion, it could be Monday. It doesn't even matter. It's just one. I have a scanning tool on my phone. My podcast app is super important to me for, and like a health app. Like it's very basic. I don't have 7,000 apps. I don't think you need all that. The simpler you make it, again, just back to focus, the easier it's going to be. And in terms of an actual tool, I would say the tool that's going to work and the system that's going to work is the tool you're going to use and the system you're going to use. It doesn't matter. Like I bet it, I like, again, it's customized. Like I really like Notion. People hate Notion. They like Asana, it doesn't matter. It's like whatever you're going to use is the one that you should be focused on. And that's it. But keep it really, really simple. So I'd say basically a calendar, some type of calendar app that you like, some type of project management tool that you like, and maybe a note-taking tool. And like I said, like a scanner. And that's it. I can run my whole life on that. I run my business and life. Yeah.
Nice.
What's interesting is I would add a piece to that, and it would simply be, to your point, if those are the 4 that you choose to use, whatever 4 you choose to use, stay with those for an extended period of time, so that you learn all the different tools. Because what I experience when people try to use different apps is they use it, they have a real superfluous level of understanding of how to use it. They don't get deep into all the different things that it can do. And then they either discard it or move on to the next shiny object because they're like, oh, it didn't work for me. I'm like, well, you didn't use it long enough to truly understand the value of it and see what you could really do for you. But by staying with a couple key ones and working with them, what you often find today even is many of these are integrated. Mm-hmm. So you can have your Outlook, working directly with your Asana and, whatever else it is, and they're all communicating and connecting. But you just didn't take the time to realize how effective it could be because you were bouncing around with all these different programs you're trying to use. Yeah,
100%. There's a lot of I tried this one, then I tried this one, I tried this one. And so it's tough. I will say I do try to encourage my clients to stay away from like a paper planner and move to a digital planner. That is one thing, a digital calendar. Simply because you can lose your planner, you leave it in the car, you don't have it with you when there's a million things that can happen. So that is one thing I encourage. But again, some people like Outlook, some like Google Calendar. So it doesn't matter. Just pick one. Just pick one and stick with it. And then figure out how.
Yeah, I love your answer though. What works for you is what you should use. That's the key.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think kind of the last thing that I want to touch on, and then would love to hear a little bit more about kind of your business and some of the things that you have going on, is actually bringing it full circle back to something that you brought up at the very beginning, which was the struggle that so many business owners have to delegate. And that's such a key to, being more effective and efficient and feeling better, right? Which you said is kind of how you define productivity. So I'd be curious, how do you approach that with a client that really struggles with maybe relinquishing that control and allowing that delegation to happen in their business?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, it stunts your growth. There's only that far you can go alone. So I think that's, first of all, just that understanding. And then we just start really small, just like putting your feet on the floor in the morning to get you up. Like, what's the smallest, lowest hanging fruit that we can delegate? So you just start getting used to using your delegation muscle, right? You just have to build the confidence again that I can actually hand this off and everything's not going to fall, everything's not going to go crazy and it's going to be just fine. So sometimes we just need a little bit of hand-holding and encouragement to say, okay, let's try this one small thing. And even if it doesn't work, all that means is we have to tweak it, give them maybe a little bit more guidance or a direction. Maybe it wasn't clear enough, and then do it again. But definitely I'd say start with the lowest hanging fruit, the thing that's easy. We all know the things. If you had to, anyone knows, they're like, what is the thing I really shouldn't be doing that I could just be handing off pretty simply? We all know it. We know it like that. So that's where we'll start. And again, it's not only great for you, but you are just being a better leader. You get to now help somebody else grow. You get to help, them develop their skills. And 9 out of 10 times, they're going to do it way better than you are because they don't have 8,000 things on their plate. Like, if I have my social media person doing my social media, yes, they have other clients, but that's all they do is social media. So she's going to do it a lot better than I'm going to do it when I have, when I'm trying to wear every hat in my business. So that's something to do too. And very rarely do we feel like, oh, I really want that thing back. It happens sometimes, but even at home, like if I have someone cleaning our house or we have someone mowing our lawn, I'm never like, oh gosh, I wish I could get back on the tractor and go do that. I wish I could clean my own toilet and that she's been doing it. We don't do that. Like, like once you hand it over and it starts working well, you're like, why did I not do this sooner? Why was I holding on to this thing for so long? So I just kind of walk through that whole kind of mindset with them and thinking that through and relating it to something personally, like maybe someone at home they have help with, or the sitter or whatever it might be, that you're like, oh yeah, I remember how great that felt. I can do this in my business too.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Curious if you use a tool like what's your time worth calculation type tool or something like that.
I'll do like a toggle or something. You mean like somewhere you?
So no, what I'll often do with a client, and again, my target audience is the business owner or somebody in high up at the company. And I'll say, if you're let's say you're making 100,000 a year, there's 2,000 hours, and then your time's worth $50 an hour. Anything that you're doing that's not worth $50 an hour is something that probably should be delegated, right?
Yeah.
Just straight line right out of the gate, right? And so I typically use that often resonates with many people. I know it resonates with me, but then I'm a numbers person. So, but not everybody doesn't resonate with everybody that way, but that's something I often introduce because it gets them to recognize, particularly business owner, bottom line thinking, hey, this is a task that definitely can be done for somebody who's making 15 or 18 bucks an hour.
Yeah, so I love that. I do a little bit different approach, but I think it gets the same result. But when we do a little chart and it's like 25, under 25, 100, 1,000, and 10,000 or something like that. And then it's just, what are those tasks that fall into those buckets?
Okay.
Really everything under 100 might, you should be delegating or whatever the number is. And I think over that, let's keep it. But start with the lowest one, start with the $25. Start with those. Like, those are the easiest ones to give away.
Yeah. And to your point, I like that too. It's the muscle, it's a delegation muscle. Let's get good at that. Let's get comfortable with that and then build off of that.
Yeah. 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 And then people become like delegation queens. So going back to Shamika, that was another thing we worked on, that she was doing everything and we've been delegating. And she's not 100%, but she's so much more focused on the law practice of growing the law practice of, going out there and getting new business, of solving big problems versus like scheduling and, figuring out their move to the new location and, just all these things that were keeping her up at night. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's funny how you say that, because I know that lots of times what I recognize is clients are so slow to delegate, right? Because they don't want to give up control. They don't want to, somebody's not going to do it as well as I can do it, right? All those things. And the flip side to that scenario is the person who dumps.
Yes.
When I learned it, we were in retail management and I was in as a director and they were like, the guy that introduced the concept to me, and I was in my late 20s, I think, or something like that. And he's like, look, there's delegating and then there's dumping.
Yes.
And he goes, and dumping is the equivalent of like, here's what I don't want to do, figure it out. and And then you get frustrated when they don't do what they're supposed to do. But I'm like, you didn't give them any guidance or direction or anything like that. And so it was interesting. I see owners do that too. And that's, I'm like, that's not delegating. that's just, taking all the things that you didn't want to do and letting somebody else handle it. And that's not good either. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then one thing I'll do with them, and as you probably know, is that every delegation has to have some system around it. And it could be 3 steps. It could be 1 step. It could be maybe a 3-page document. Again, it varies what it is, but there's some system, and a system can just be 2 steps, So again, it doesn't have to be anything really complicated, but that's what ensures that you get the work done as you want it to, and you get the results that you're expecting. And then it also sets the expectations for the other person, which is so important, because often you're not getting the results you want, not because they're not capable and they're not smart. They're just did not set the expectations properly. And that becomes the onus of the leader. Yeah,
totally.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, you have shared a lot of really good information. Thank you. And I'm sure that people that are, watching this or listening to this are probably thinking, okay, yeah, I could actually manage my day more effectively. I could manage my time, my priorities. And so if they want to learn more, if they want to work with you, what's the next step look like for them?
Well, I appreciate you asking and giving me the opportunity to share. Come on over to Life is Organized. It's where you'll find all the things. I also have a podcast. So if your podcast listeners are listening to podcasts, that's a great place to start and get to know me. So Productivity on Purpose. But also if you come to lifeisorganized.com/resources, there's lots of resources there on how to stop feeling overwhelmed, or how to focus and take back control. So that's also a great place just to, get something from me, get to know me. And then lastly, I'm on all the socials. So Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, all on the Life is Organized.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Eric, before we go, anything that you want to share, anything that you're working on before we wrap up today?
No, I'm still holding on to it, David. I'm not sharing yet. We're not there yet.
Every week I'm trying to get him to spill this big project he's working on, but I guess it's not the week. So maybe if you manage your time a little more effectively, Eric, you could get that.
Well, I figure if I tease it long enough, when I release it, people are going to be like, "This is amazing."
There you go.
That's
Nice. Okay. All right.
That's some good marketing there. So.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you both. It's been great, and thank you so much for your time and being our guest today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you.
See ya.